How's your week been?
My week has been sad. I've listened to so-called Gen Zs who claim, if I use the definition of a Gen Z out of America, they're supposed to be highly informed. Our Kenyan Gen Zs are not. So to me, I'll say Gen Z. Okonado, Z. We all know what that means for those of us who are initiated. Yes. So the week has been, I looked at the Tuesday, whatever went on Tuesday. I watched a government in control, which is what I like to see. On Tuesday again, I saw business people take the law into their hands and decided if the government cannot protect my premises from non-tax paying individuals, they shall take up their arms and protect their businesses. To me, that has been a good takeaway.
Yeah, that amounts to incitement.
You call it what you want. To me, incitement is when somebody says, go and occupy parliament. That is incitement. So the person should have been picked up. And since they did not, it's open season.
So here's my thing. One, why is it wrong to occupy parliament? Parliament is a public building. That is where my representative sits. And I just wanted to go and share my grievances. Why are we all arms about this?
But he was not present.
They were in parliament.
No, they were not.
They ran away.
No, they had finished their session and gone.
No, we saw people in tunnels being whisked away.
How many? How many members of parliament do we have?
Why were they whisked away?
No, how many members of parliament do we have?
345.
Did you see 345 of them go through the tunnel?
The footages were afterwards. Yeah. So if we had some people in parliament,
they were returning to their offices, which are across the other side of the road.
Exactly, but why were they whisked in ambulances?
Where? You couldn't use an ambulance through the tunnel?
We saw ambulances whisking members of parliament away.
On Uhuru Highway.
Coach, you know I have footages.
It's okay. Footage can be doctored. Could be last month's footage or 3 years footage.
We will cancel you.
I have no issue with being cancelled. But the good thing is I know is that this is a generation that does not know how to do it. So they are leaderless, headless, and directionless.
I think you need to take that back.
I will not. Where? People who go and make noise on a platform. Let me ask this.
What is wrong with people going to a public office?
I don't know if there must be a reason why not, because all public offices have armed guards at the door, have grills around the building. So is
it wrong to go to a public office?
First, let's define a public office.
Go ahead, give me a definition.
You give me. You're the one who's talking about public offices. What's a public office?
An office that serves the people, the public.
So if it's easy, it should be wide open.
Yes.
So why do I keep being asked to identify whether I'm a citizen to walk into a public office?
And that's a very good question.
So is it a public office? So at that point, is it a public office?
When did we start asking for these IDs? And
when some Americans killed each other. So I don't know what Americans killing each other has to do with us.
Exactly.
So you see, that's why I'm saying our problem is not from yesterday.
Our problem
is much deeper. And the problem is we cannot come and start discussing an issue from today going forward and refusing to look at historical.
That's a good point. Fair point.
And my biggest problem is, I think I've said this to you a few times. Moi told us, Kenyans can only handle an issue for 3 weeks, maximum. The Gen Zs have done 2 weeks, which means Moi's estimate was based on my generation, not yours. Mine could hold issues going for 3 weeks. This one, 2 weeks.
Haven't we?
You've done 2 weeks. Look.
We started off in June.
Making noise.
But that's where it starts. I don't know why you are.
My concern is you have avenues to make change, but you revert to your grandfather's methods of doing it. So then what are we talking about? There's no progress. The same demonstrations when Jaramogi was disagreeing with Mzee Kenyatta is exactly the same way you're doing it today. So what's the difference? What's this?
Tell me this. How should you approach this differently?
I don't know. It's your generation. Mine has done its part. Sisi tunangoja kwenda retire. So mwache kutuharibia tuko barabarani tukienda. Wachaneni na sisi tuende. Then you pick up from there and you can do with this piece of land what you want to do with it.
Coach Yawe, by the way. This is where we borderline kuongea mbaya na freedom of expression.
Unajua kuongea mbaya.
You're basically insulting people. That's like, this is what you're doing.
President Kenyatta once told us, Mzee Jomo once told us, what did Kenyatta tell us? No, Kenyatta told us, msitembee nyuma yangu, tutembee beggar kwa beggar. Okay? But I'm trying to remember what he used to insult us. There's a way he used to call us. He used to call us Manyangau. Then Moi called us Nyani. Kibaki called us Mavia Kuku. I don't think I've come anywhere close to those three. Now, if nobody went to court because of the other three, why would they want to go to court now?
That the session, they did not disrupt any session. Hence, the repercussions will not have been dire.
Yes.
Now, I want the members of parliament represent the people.
Yes.
The people will not have went ahead to occupy parliament if they had listened to the voices of the people. Because the MPs, here's what I'm saying. Majority of the voice was, we don't want this thing. Okay? Why did then the MPs? Because it was loud and clear. We had 34 counties going up in arms, towns.
You're asking for anarchy.
I'm not asking for anarchy.
You are, because we have 54 million Kenyans. How many objected? You can't use the term many.
How many voters do we have? Let's start there.
15 million?
15, 12 million, somewhere
15,
there.
12 million, yes.
Yes. That is the number of people who put the MPs in parliament.
Yes.
Okay? I don't know how many people went up in arms to demonstrate. I don't have that specific figure. But
were they 15? Views, were they 10 million? Were they a million?
From aerial view, it appeared to be a million. No. Especially in Nairobi.
There's no way it was a million. Nairobi's total population during the day is 4 million. There is no way a third of Nairobi, a quarter of Nairobi was on the streets. Secondly, the 12 million we're talking about are registered voters who voted.
Yes.
So let's start. We could have had 1 million people on the street. How many were registered voters? You see, at the end of the day, we have a constitution that defines how we appoint a member of parliament and whose voice he's responding to. I like the fact that 4 or 5 members of parliament went back to their constituencies and said, I voted yes. And if it comes again, I shall vote yes. Why? Here are the reasons. You asked me to give you a road, it's part of that yes. You asked me to upgrade your hospital, it's part of the yes. You asked me to get you teachers for your junior secondary, it's part of my yes. Now, do you want to beat me because of saying yes? And the people say no. So let's accept whether you vote or not, you agree with the winner.
Yeah, that's the downside of democracy.
So there's a flaw in democracy as a feature. It's basically flawed. Now, do we go and sort that out, or do we have a few people going to parliament to disrupt it? That's a key question. It's very, I don't think I'm that intelligent to understand that. So I assume out there are people who are much more intelligent than I am, who should be then able to articulate why they think that people going on the street and asking a head of state who is constitutionally elected to step down. So the first thing they need to do is each one of them needs to present their vote, that they are voters and they did vote. If they are not registered voters, then they have no say in removing the person we elected as a head of state. It's common sense. Sorry to say. It's simple common sense. We have structures to get rid of a member of parliament. So if in your constituency you have an issue with your member of parliament, deal with that issue at constituency level, not at national level. If you have an issue with your MCA, deal with it at the ward level, not at the county level, at the ward level. If it fails, ask us and say, if it fails at this level, what options do I have? And that's the conversation I thought somebody will do. I thought somebody will draw us a flow chart and say, how to recall an MCA? 1, 2, 3, 4. How to recall a head of state? You've elected senators, but only if you voted. If you did not vote, you have no moral or constitutional footing to discuss your senator. It's that simple.
But the moral authority comes from the preamble, where it says the fact that you are a Kenyan, you have a right.
Then it goes on to say, your representative shall be elected through a secret ballot method where they shall get the simple majority of the votes cast. Note, of the votes cast. Are you against that? Then let's go and discuss another method. But if you allowed that to go through, then shut up until we get to the next election, get to the ballot, and change how the vote is done. Simple. And if you want to recall your member of parliament, you need to raise the number of signatories of registered voters. The ones who voted them in are the only ones who can vote them out. So if you do not have an electoral card, don't. And I have. My daughter was, sad to say, part of the earlier demonstrations. And of my 3 children, she's the only one who never voted. So I have an issue. The 2 who are registered voters and voted were not on the streets. Why? Chances are they understand that they elected someone and that person is responsible for making the decision. We give out proxy. That's what we don't get. It's representative democracy. Once your representative is there, you're represented. How he votes is how you would have voted.
Coach. But let us agree, Ruto has to go.
It's okay. In the next election, he can go. But not in between.
Not in between.
Yes, in between, there are grounds to impeach a head of state.
Can we put sufficient pressure as a people?
No, you cannot. You can't put your pressures for 3 weeks. You think you can put pressure for the month that goes towards an election. Then the question of saying, oh, these are not the Gen Zs. If you discuss an age group, you cover everyone in that age group. When you have one part of that group that after demonstrations goes to Java, then what happens to the ones who could go to Java?
So they go to Mamoliech.
Do you know the cost of a meal?
No, there's Mamoliech in the corner. I'm not talking about the one in Kilimani.
The one in corner. So again, is that if it's an age group, then whatever happens, the entire age group must take responsibility for it and cannot abdicate. They cannot say, no, we're infiltrated. No. You called yourself an age group, so prove yourselves as an age group. And that's why I told somebody, the Masai Moran system is very effective. I wish most of these young people could go and look at how it works. They take their 14 to 25-year-olds and they send them away. And they are gone for years. And when they come back, they come to take over leadership. But they must come back with clearly defined leaders who will go forward with them. Not we are leaderless. That's the height of idiocy. Even America, which is supposed to be the greatest nation on earth, has a leader. One. The buck must stop at a desk.
What's the significance of having? Why is it always important to always have a figure? I've seen systems like holocracy that purport to be circular. Why is it you make this having someone who we can speak to critical?
King Arthur's round table. King Arthur's round table. It was not a table of kings. It still was King Arthur's. It was round.
What's the downside of not having a figure?
That's when you now realize we are nothing more than animals. Yes. If even in the lowest of the animal kingdoms, there is a leader. So you're pretending not to be part of human nature, of nature. The ants have a leader. The bees have a leader. The lions have a leader. The crocodiles, I believe, have a leader. We'll need to go and check. So if they don't have, then maybe that's what we want to become. It's crocodiles in a lake, in a river who can do what they want.
It's interesting that now that you said that, there's one documentary I saw that even trees have a network of how they communicate.
Yes.
And they always have a mother tree, which is like the source. So the argument in the video is that all the roots on earth, they're sort of interconnected.
Yes.
And the quickest way of bringing down a forest is taking down the biggest tree. Because the moment you remove that, you
remove the communication network.
Yes, because that is the central piece.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because if this tree has no sufficient nutrients and this other tree has sufficient nutrients, thanks to the roots, they will find a way to
give this one the nutrients it
requires.
Yeah. So now you understand why there must be a single leader at the top. Mm-hmm. It's just nature.
Someone has to bring all these people together.
We have a solar system with one sun. Why? It's what we are built. We must look up to something.
That's quite interesting. Reminds me of the biblical series where Peterson says we always need to have an ideal. And when the Romans wanted to make the empire equivalent to God, so you eliminate the piece of God, then they said the emperor will not have something to look up to. So we need to have an ideal we aspire to.
Even he needs an ideal to aspire to.
Yes. Are you familiar with Dr. Wale Akinyemi?
Is he Kenyan?
No, he's not Kenyan.
Nope.
He's Nigerian, but works a lot in Kenya. I think he runs some leadership sessions and also publishes on your favorite daily, The Nation.
Yani karatasi ya kufunga nyama. Siku hizi sikulangi nyama. I've been told to keep off red meat.
We'll come back to that. So there is something. So he was featured on Dr. Kingori's show.
Okay.
And interestingly, I was also reading his book. There's a book I'm reading. And there's this interesting idea that I picked from it. And he was saying that you need to be humble to learn. That humility allows you to realize that you don't know everything. And you open up your mind to opportunities and also intellectually allow you to consume a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
One, you just insulted me. But it's okay. We'll move forward from there.
How did this become about you?
It's all about me now. Because you remember the book based on my earlier statement.
I started off this as a transition from the noise you've been making.
It's okay. It's okay. Now we'll move forward. I'm humble enough to take your insult and move on. Okay. Now, when I was younger, I remember reading somewhere that you should not blow your own trumpet. But then my mother once told me that you should not blow other people's trumpets because you do not know where their mouths have been. So the question becomes, which of the two should I take? Should I not blow my own trumpet? Or should I blow other people's trumpet, even though I don't know what infection I will end up picking up on the way? So somebody said, be humble to learn. But the question becomes is, what do you mean by me being humble? Does me telling you the truth about what's going on mean that I'm not humble? Does me not agreeing with your point of view because it's already coming from a position which I know is not from one of knowledge, but one of ignorance?
Let me first of all stop you there. And I want to say this has nothing to do with you. In fact, the good chunk of what you've been speaking about is going to be deleted and cut off. Okay? No, seriously.
No. They're literally threatening me with not having my voice heard.
No. Seriously, I'm asking a question of genuine curiosity. Is how can you be humble to learn? How do you embody that intellectual humility? And it has nothing to do with what you've been talking about in Nyani and this is my week. This is something that has resonated with me.
Okay. It's an age issue. Okay. For example, if the intellectual you're talking about is the authority on an issue, and the person who is purporting to want to educate him is already kicking off from a position where it is clear that they have no clarity of what they want to say. They have no historical basis from which they are basing their argument. Should they allow them to continue or should they stop them? And I think that's where the whole issue comes in, is that we have a tendency to use statements to allow us a voice when we should not have a voice. And which is what social media has become. It has allowed everyone a voice when, in principle, they should not have a voice. Our media houses caused this problem first by allowing people to make comments as if they are an authority when they were not. Our academics failed us because they allowed people to make statements which sounded authoritative, but the academic knew very well was not. So when you have somebody who has no financial experience giving people advice on finance, it's criminal. It's the same way I will not allow a doctor who is not certified and registered and licensed to treat. But yet will allow somebody to literally create mayhem across an entire country based on them making statements for which they are they are unknowledgeable in. So we've given everyone a platform to speak, which is very dangerous. So the same comes now back to the more of what you said. The people who tell you that you must be humble to learn are usually the ones trying to stop the voice of reason. I hope I've redeemed myself and my recording will not be deleted.
No. Forget about your recording. This is quite fascinating. Here's my thought on this. Makes a lot of sense, and I agree. I don't think giving people, like giving someone financial advice from a point of lack of experience, something like what Vusi says, where he argues and says he does not understand how someone who's employed goes ahead to teach entrepreneurs how to run a business.
Yes.
Okay, so this is something I've seen, and I totally agree. You are safe. There are decisions as an entrepreneur has to make, whether you're going to feed your family or you're going to invest. Someone who's employed cannot or may not be able to make that decision. But here's my question, Coach. You say that the people who say these kind of statements, I took it from a positive note, okay? But you say that the people who put across these statements, they put them across so that they prevent other people from reasoning, or rather silencing the other voices of reason. That's what I picked from that. Did I get that correctly?
Yes.
Now, here's my question. If the people are not able to reason it out, how will they challenge it? Because I feel like we need to allow these voices to be heard so that they can be challenged. Because I think you have to learn first before you can even form an opinion.
I'll use something like, if I know you're about to shout fire in a crowded theater when there's none, should I let you?
No, you're going to cause mayhem.
Yes.
But I feel like, and I think the reason why we are having this challenge is where we started this conversation off from,
yes,
with the protest in Nairobi. But I want us to forget about that, the protest bit of it.
Okay.
And look at it from the statement itself. Because I genuinely think you need a level of humility to even learn something, to accept the fact that you don't know something. I want us to ignore everything else that was initial to this conversation that might not end up in this
episode. Let's start here. What's humility?
Humility, how I define it, and probably actually so that we can get, because the last time we looked up the definition of excise duty, we realized
yeah, and which the president then went ahead to push through. I loved that one.
Why would you love that?
I loved that one. You see, you forget that there are things that do not require the finance bill.
Can you keep off politics?
We can't keep off politics. Life is politics.
The quality of having a modest or low view of one's importance.
Okay.
Mm.
So that's being humble.
Mm-hmm. That's the definition I'm getting.
Okay. So how does that come into the fact of me listening to others?
They might have something else that you don't know. Like,
I think the question is, what's the conversation?
I listen to you, okay? A lot of people listen to you.
They do. Okay. You see, I'm being humble.
Whatever you say just ruled everything off. I don't know. There is this popular TV series known as Suits.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I watched a few of those episodes some time back before it became too convoluted.
Where Harvey says arrogance is earned.
I agree with that.
But help me get this. How do we learn? How do we maintain curiosity?
I think what we are missing out on here is, if I'm an authority on something and somebody's trying to air a view from a position of ignorance, I think it's only for me and that person that I interject.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you agree?
I agree.
Yes. And it does not mean just because I'm interjected on that one, that in other areas I will do the same. So if I walk in to see my doctor and my doctor is giving me advice on an issue, he's the authority. So definitely I shall not pretend to interject. And I think what we have is we need to be very careful about being timid and being humble. Most of the time when somebody tells you try being humble, what they're actually asking you to do is to be timid. And I think we need to be very careful when people make certain statements. And also it's also based on what is the situation. Yes. So we cannot make it a blanket statement that for you to learn, you must be humble. The question is, who is asking me, who is telling me that? What's the reference point? And to me, most people, it'll be because they want me to be timid. And that, to me, is not right.
How do you maintain curiosity?
Curiosity is something that's inherent. If you didn't build it when you're young, forget it. You're not going to be able to do it when you're older.
Carol Dweck will disagree with you on that.
Oh, will Nani?
Carol. So Carol Dweck is a Stanford professor who wrote the book Mindset, and he believes that we all have the ability to actually develop a growth mindset that allows us, that maintains that curiosity. Yes, she does acknowledge the fact that when you are young, you have the curiosity, and as you grow older, we tend to lose it, and mainly because of how our education structure, as to education system is designed, we tend to lose it. But then she also argues that we have the capability to bring it back.
Okay. Your statement is, she said, maintain curiosity.
Yeah.
So to maintain means it is already there.
Mm-hmm.
She did not say you can develop curiosity.
So curiosity is there.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's there. And your statement also says, she says maintain. So in other words, and I don't think it's our education system. I think that's again another misnomer.
Okay. I might have.
I went through an education system where 80% of my colleagues claim they are not curious because of the education system. But we sat in the same classroom. So I'm trying to be humble. So
just be yourself.
Now, you see, if I use the word, am I unique? Then I'll be ceasing to be humble.
Okay, let's use peculiar then.
So am I peculiar or am I odd? The humble one would be, I'd say I'm odd. I'm the odd man out. Why? Because if 80% of the people who went through a system lack a certain trait that I have, then really, based on majority rule, then I can be dismissed as an oddity.
So education has a part to play, right? Because we were graded on how much you can remember. I remember being told things like smart, oh, you're not good in these. And the things that I was not good at, I was never good at. And up to date, I'm not good at them, okay?
Okay.
And these are messages that slowly get internalized. And we eventually tend to accept them, okay? As facts. These are like their beliefs, they become limiting, and they sort of block us that opportunity to even try and expand and explore out of it. The environment also plays a critical role. Describe for me the environment you grew up in. How would you describe it?
In terms of?
And I'm asking this that allowed you to develop the curiosity. And I'm asking this for people who have kids. So it has nothing to do with you.
Okay, I grew in an environment where television started at 4:00. There was only one channel. We had an opportunity to listen to very many radio stations. Be it local, I could listen to BBC, I could listen to Russia radio, I could listen to... So all I had to do was to turn a dial. And I could switch to all kinds of content.
You guys had universal radio?
Yes.
You guys were rich.
No, it's everyone.
No,
our radios had shortwave.
No, we didn't have universal radio. We had the normal radio FM.
I don't know where... No, if you
wave.
checked... Yes, your medium wave and your short wave would catch all kinds of... Wasn't curious enough.
No.
You are not curious enough.
I was tuning to
turn
those.
the dial.
No, I was tuning the dial, especially with short waves, and you could. At some point, I even thought those were sheeps. Those were sheeps, and like captains communicating.
Actually, I think even today you could still pick up VOA and
Voice of
BBC.
America?
Yes, and BBC.
On shortwave?
Yes, on shortwave.
Or you can stream on acute media. Keep going.
Thank you. You can stream it. So what I'm saying is that then, in terms of that environment, it is the environment was always conducive to being curious, as you're trying to say. One, because I couldn't go home and sit down the whole day. I would have to go out and engage with other children, and would find ways to do certain things. Create new games, would change rules of existing games. And I think that's maybe where it is that the interaction that I had. So my environment was identical to the environment of 80% of my peers.
Tell me this. How do we end up losing? You said if you lose it, if you're young, in old age, it will be difficult to develop it. Just expound a bit on that.
It's difficult for me to say what makes me curious, but it's just that to me, I've always been somebody who looked at something and wanted to know deeper about it. I opened my parents' radios to try and understand what was happening behind there. And these are the days of tubes, not even ICs and the rest. These were tubes. When the technician came to fix the television, I sat next to him. And when he'd open the back of the TV, ilikuwa ile ya tumbo. I'd ask, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And he responded. And I think there's more to it than the education system. Possibly also it's my position. Being fourth in a family means that, one, you have more people who you can ask the why question and they'll give you a response. I feel, and somebody needs to do some empirical study, is firstborns might be less curious because they are dealing with adults who will tell them, stop asking me why. When you're young, I think, and you have other siblings, you asking questions gave them an opportunity for them to try and explain an issue. And however much the explaining might have been totally warped and whack, at least they did respond. And then later on, maybe you'd find out, okay, fine. That response that was given by my brother 3 years ago wasn't too intelligent. But at least I got a response to help me build that knowledge base. And that, I think, is where it comes from. So to me, my problem is that we are trying to teach curiosity, and there's this other thing schools are now doing.
Social skills or what?
No. There's another one called
creative?
Something thinking.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
Yeah.
Again, we are turning everything into an academic process. Yet most of it should have happened in the environment in which you are growing up. So I know I've not answered your question because in principle, I don't really know why I'm curious. I just know I am. And I could try and come up with 1,001 explanations to why. But until I can prove it empirically, then I'm shooting in the dark.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, the why question is very important, and being able to understand the environment you grew up in will then help us to replicate that environment in other places. Not necessarily your environment,
but a similar environment.
A similar environment.
Yes. And I think that can happen. I've been toying with this thing of asking parents with young children to start playing darts with them.
Darts?
Yes. And playing the 301, 501 and the rest. Because I think what it does is that it's multifaceted. It's a simple game which allows you to engage with your children. It allows them some dexterity activities as well as mental. Yes. And our problem is we're trying to do very complex things. We don't understand that the mind needs to be developed constantly. So it's not about quality of time. It's about quantity. How much quantity of a chance to be curious are you putting your children through? Not the quality. Our problem is we want the quality. We want the best opportunity for curiosity. Doesn't work. It must be inculcated. It's a drizzle. It's not a thunderstorm. It's consistently, every day, every minute. If you keep doing that, then that now builds it into the person. Yes. And if that doesn't happen early enough, too bad.
For someone who, for the parents, so that means they also have to be curious. They have to develop, they have to work on that muscle.
Yes.
So that they can also, I've not played darts, for instance. So that means if I'm to play with my kids, then I have to learn and push myself.
And push yourself, yes.
Okay.
To do it. What we have done is we have abdicated that role to schools.
Okay.
Taking children to boarding schools early is also 1,000 times worse. And because we don't get it. The reason boarding schools were set up in Europe was for the children of the elite. Because there were so few of them, they couldn't go to schools within their homes. So they were all put together away in schools that only trained them. We then came in, and because the elite are the ones who took their children to boarding school, we all assumed that taking the children to boarding school was a core objective. It was not. It was to get them to gather around people with similar backgrounds. Today you take your children and you put them in a boarding school, they will not be with people of similar background. And therefore, your chances are, you then start wondering why your child comes home with what are unacceptable behavior. But you only interact with them once every 3 months. So the whole boarding school issue, the government once in a while wakes up and decides, oh, we will enforce it. Then there's a pushback and they fall back to the default. But I seriously believe we need to start getting rid of boarding schools. Otherwise, we keep getting this culture where children are being taught habits by a very small clique of people, which is those teachers in that school who you've unleashed with 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 children. You will start getting a very bad mindset because those children are getting almost a homogeneous exposure. Yes. So for those parents out there who get the unfortunate opportunity to listen to this, don't take your children to boarding school. And if your children are in these schools, do not expect the school to do everything. The school has one and only one task: to impart education. The rest is your responsibility as a parent. The extracurricular for your child is your responsibility as a parent. It is not the school's responsibility. Yes. And until we start appreciating some of these things, then we can't complain about the fact that there's a disconnect between parents and their children.
That has to sink in. But I definitely see the value in that. I think we end up looking up to these few teachers. And in most cases, you'll find their teachers, even the kids, don't respect.
The parents don't respect. Yes. It's the parents who cause the children to disrespect teachers. Because we talk down about the teacher. And I've never understood it. You talk down to a teacher, then you drive your child to the school and leave them with the same teacher you have just spoken ill about. We are sick as parents, sorry to say. Something's seriously wrong. How would you tell me that this is a bad doctor, then you go there to get treated? Kuna kasoro mahali. Yes.
How would you recommend this kind of constructive feedback? How should we channel this to learning institutions or teachers?
No, the problem is not learning institutions. The problem is not teachers. The problem is parents.
Yes. So parents have observed something they would want to deliver to the teacher, and how, just a few tips on how we can do
such as, let's look at the statements. Huo mwalimu ni maskini, atatuambia nini? Now you explain to me, what kind of feedback is that? So ask yourself.
You to eat below the bed.
No, it's...
Okay, I know you work you're in a school board, so you definitely have seen this.
I've seen this. And I think I mentioned it last time when one of the teachers tells us in one of the schools where I sit on the board, and the teacher says, can you imagine a parent sending a child to a public school, secondary school, boarding school, with 2 cartons of long life milk? Explain that one to me. So what do you want the child to come and do? You have no faith in what else is happening apart from the education. Then take your child to a day school. If your child goes to a boarding school, they need to not become a distraction to the other children. So the school provides githeri every day. Your child who goes there should eat githeri throughout. Not you supplying them with 10 boxes of margarine. No. Stop traumatizing other children. Take your children to the school which you believe is commensurate with the standard of living you want them to acquire. Otherwise, you will have children who you will not believe what they are capable of doing, and you won't know where that culture came from. But we're digressing a bit. The key issue is this. You're taking your child, who for all intents and purposes is ignorant. You're handing them over to a person to impart a level of knowledge into that child. Do you really think it is logical for you to talk ill of that person?
No.
Why do we? I sit with teachers. These people are angels. The extremes to which they go for people's children, and people who care the least about that person. I could never go home and talk ill of a teacher. I'll be bitten like a snake. Dare me go home and say something negative about a teacher? My mother would have beaten me from here to kingdom come. Couldn't happen. And I learned to respect the teacher. I still respect my teachers. The few who are still alive and I bump into, I still give them the same respect. There's some I meet who used to beat me thoroughly. But if they did not, man, what I would have turned out to be, even I'm scared. But it got to the point where I could not even go home and tell my mother I was beaten in school. Because she'll come to school the other day to find out exactly why I was beaten, and then so that now she knows why she's also going to beat me. Not that she was going to argue with the teacher. No. I just need to know the level of beating I should give him when we go back home. So I just want to know how bad was what he did. Yes, that was my mother. Yes. Today, I have parents sitting with the presence of a teacher and their child, and them supporting the child's position. The 2-3 times my mother had to sit in the same table with me and a teacher, it was me who was the target. It was never the teacher. And when we get that, then maybe we'll start moving this country forward.
I'm way younger than you. I experienced the same. And actually, now that you mentioned teachers, I need to shout out my math and science teacher. That human being whooped me.
Till you met the grade.
Until I met the grade. So Mr. Chacha, when I was in Ayani Primary, so Mr. Chacha was my teacher, my math and science teacher.
Yes.
And actually, I think, to be honest, he really helped me out. And cutting across from, I wasn't the most disciplined human being or child at that time, but he really took his time to understand understand me and also even understand all the other kids,
Yes.
the other students. Despite being in a free primary class, he really tried to ensure all the kids. That what I mean by that is we were so many. He tried to really support all the kids equally.
Yes.
Of course, at some point, then he had to wash his hands and say, "Okay, where the kata." Where did we? And I grew up at a point where even being a teacher was the profession we looked up to.
Yes.
We respected teachers. We value teachers. We knew teachers are going to up to date. I respect my nursery teacher. She also sums up to be my aunt. Thanks to her, I know how to read. I know how to write. I know colors. And where did we lose it? And I think that is. And for this, I agree with you. I think I agree with you totally. What?
Okay, fine.
I just agreed with you.
Yes. It's... okay. Yes.
At what point did we lose even the respect for teachers, even that value, just slightly?
We did it when what mattered was how much I earn, not what's the value of what I provide to society. That's when we lost it. And so you look down at the person who took a lower pay to impart knowledge to hundreds of ignorant children so that they could become self-reliant in the future. And we assumed because I was an accountant, I was an engineer somewhere, and I earned 10 times what the teacher earned, I was more important to society than the teacher. That is where it did. And it continues to be the same today.
And it's a bad culture.
Yes.
Because without this teacher, you'll not have an engineer. Without this teacher, you'll not have a doctor.
Yes.
Without this teacher, you'll not have a pilot. It all starts with the basics.
With the basics. From your kindergarten, nursery school teacher.
Yes.
Yes. Who takes the time to deal with your social issues.
Yeah.
To potty train you. Help you learn how to interact with other children.
Like it, yeah.
Your social skills. Your
Yes.
what. All that, what you finally become later on in life, started then. If that person did not have the dedication to do it, would be a world full of very mediocre people.
That's true.
But yet you get to a certain level and you think that you got there of your own abilities and efforts. Your parents think they're the ones who've got you there because they paid exorbitant fees for you to go to school.
It's not the school, it's the teacher.
It's the teacher.
We need to celebrate teachers more.
Yes. And I liked at least the president went to see some of his high school teachers.
No, I think, like
Mr. Mwalimu Chacha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Chacha.
Yeah, we all have. I have Pepela and what was the other one called? It's called. There was one called Monda. We used to teach us shop, what the Americans call shop, a workshop.
Yes.
Yes, and I remember him using a file to rub it on your skin.
The file?
Yes.
What had you done?
Whatever it is I did, I must have deserved it. And I think that's where we all need to remember that teacher sacrificed.
Yeah.
It was sacrifice.
It was.
Yes. They still sacrifice today. It's not any different. But then when that teacher asks for just a little bit of respect, we want to literally throw tantrums in their presence. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've never understood. Yes. I walk around a school and I see teachers going out of their way. And I know that there's still humanity. Yes, there still is humanity in this world. But until we start accepting it and respecting it, we'll keep producing children who then we wonder, why is society going to the dogs? Because the people who are responsible for molding those children are being treated like second-rate citizens.
Should you overturn the pay of the teachers?
The teacher is not looking for pay, please.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, and that's what people need to come to appreciate. If they were to charge us the true value of the service they give us,
yeah, I agree.
We can't afford it. We can't. Let's not lie. We can't afford it. Yes. You can't deal with 3 of your own children. This person is dealing with 120 children of other people. They're not their children, not their relatives. But they're willing to go out of their way to make sure those 120 children at least meet a mark. Yes.
Your experience at Upper Hill with C students being brought in as the source. You're talking about the source and the output.
Yes.
And appreciating the rate of change.
It was more about the complaint from parents. Oh, you're not giving us enough A's. And really the headmaster asked, what did you give me? What kind of students did you give me? You gave me C students. I'm giving you back B's and A's and part A's. To me, I think I've achieved my objective. And I believe the person then who, when you then claim, no, but Alliance is getting more A's, but Alliance received A students. So really, Alliance should be looked at. If they have a single B, they should be dealt with. Because how did you take an A and turn it into a B? We never picked a C and turned it into a D. If you gave us a D, we turned it into a C or a B. If you gave us a C, we gave you a B or maybe even an A. If you gave us an A, we gave you back an A. And really that's what a parent should accept. That really your child was not an A student. So you're asking for a miracle for us to turn them into an A student. And there's nothing wrong with being a B student. There's nothing wrong with being a C student. Because it's you being judged by a standard template. But that template does not cover all areas of life. That template covers one area of life. We are trying to pick people with a certain ability to replicate or to remember, so that when I make you a doctor, when I train you as a doctor, you don't need to walk around with a handbook. But think of it today. Does a doctor need to remember everything?
No.
So which means we can now literally get these students as doctors. Yeah. So the environment is changing, but we are not. We are retaining a mindset from the 20s, from the 30s, and we're in the 2000s. We're in the 21st century. So we need to ask ourselves, what really do you need in the 21st century to add value to society?
I think this conversation comes from the point where we were talking about, and I have to acknowledge, we also need to change. We need to move. We need to be able to adapt to the changes around us. If an AI tool can be able to generate content, why should you grade me on my ability to generate content as well? Okay. How we arrived at this conversation, we were talking about the head teacher at Upper Hill. The question was around, what came up was parents disrespecting teachers.
Yes.
Doing that to the extreme of doing that in front of the
teacher and the child.
And of the child. How did we get to this? And are we redeemable?
Yes, we are redeemable. But do we want to be redeemed? Very important. We got here because what mattered was how much you earned. And when a parent now felt that I earn 10 times what the teacher earns, then really I now have the authority to look down upon the teacher. Yet you have brought your child to that same teacher you're looking down upon and hoping that that teacher shall turn that child into a high earner like yourself. To me, that's madness. Yes. And until we start accepting to recognize people based on what impact they have on society and not how much money they bank, this problem shall keep getting worse. Yes.
We are constantly using income as an indicator of whether I should respect you or not.
Yes. And it happens. You hear people complaining, oh, my brother earns more than me, so when the family meets, his ideas are taken more seriously than mine.
He's the one who's going to fund them. Yes. I digress.
And you can see how far down it's getting. Yes. A parent loves the child who provides more to them materially, forgetting that there's the one who provides more to them emotionally, which is more critical, or the one who's by their side on a day-to-day basis. They have sacrificed their lives to be by them in the village. But then you look down upon them, but you have more respect for the one who is miles away, but can send you $50, $100 every so often.
I don't know if you saw, there is a story of a pilot who had the mom back at home. And of course, he was busy flying. And so the story went that I think there were two. I can't recall them accurately, but they were sending, of course, money for upkeep and all that. They later found out the mom actually passed on 6 months ago. Well, a couple of months ago.
Months before they found out, yes.
And no one knew. No one.
Yeah. And they had built her house. They had fenced the house.
Yeah.
And by the time they got to her, her cow had died, her chickens had died, and she too had died. Mm-hmm. Because again, when it comes to that point, we feel that all we owe our parents is cash. So when you then look down upon that one sibling who would have been in the homestead with the mother through that period, and then they also decide, fine, if I'm only recognized by how much I can bring onto the table, then let me go live my poor life elsewhere. And we see it. The other day I was just being a nuisance, and I had woken up and walked to the bathroom, and then I stepped on the cold tile. And I just felt all the heat in my body just dissipate, And then I tried to imagine an entire house with ceramic tiles. And then this is in a village setting. So there was a time I was in Limuru and those temperatures are cold. And I tried to think if somebody in Limuru had a house with ceramic tiles and then they got out of bed and just stepped barefoot onto that ceramic tile, it would kill you. So the whole aim of where this was coming from was somebody who was bragging about how they had gone and they'd built a house for their mother, a stone house from the mud house. They had built her a stone house with ceramic tiles. And they kept wondering why she kept suffering from flus. And so I told one of them, I remember telling somebody, the floor tiles is what is going to kill your mother. And somebody got back to me and inboxed me and said, how do we solve that problem? I told them, you can either go and buy PVC and cover those tiles, or go and look for bamboo flooring and just cover those tiles. Why? Because you're actually torturing your mother, thinking that you have done her something great. But she's too ashamed to tell you that the upgrade you gave her is killing her.
Not too ashamed. Maybe they don't even know that as well.
She does. I can assure you. I don't want to spare her and think that she doesn't.
Okay.
She wakes up and steps on that cold floor. And most likely what she has now done is, if you go to her bedside, she most likely has 4 or 5 mats. So that when she steps out, at least she steps on something not too cold as she looks around for her slippers. But on her earthen floor, she would not have needed that. You then go and remove her thatched roof and you put iron sheet roofing. You suddenly turn her house into a refrigerator. And that is what we are doing.
I want to say, I think we don't have that knowledge. Let's admit it. As a victim of...
Yes.
Because we don't know better. And we've lived an entire life thinking the
that
objective
is progress.
is to be... Yeah.
It is not.
I must have told you the fight of setting up, either choosing Kenya Power or solar.
Yes.
And it was a heavy fight. Because you are like, a section of us want to put solar, a section of us want to put Kenya Power. And you are like, who's going to foot the bill?
Yes.
We have sunlight. It's natural. It's a one-time cost.
And it's free sunlight.
It's free sunlight.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll then agree. Maybe there's a level of ignorance out there. But then let me tell anybody, if you've put ceramic tiles in your parents' house, somewhere in the village, please go remove them.
Okay, removing will be expensive. Just put bamboo.
Put bamboo, yes.
Or there's the wooden carpet. Not wooden. It's
the PVC one. The roll.
PVC, and then it has a level of thickness.
Yes.
Yeah. Very
nice. You can do that because there's a lot of things we forget. Then you most likely removed her from her open fire.
Yes.
Which radiated heat around the entire house, and now you've given her a gas cooker.
Yes.
So which now means the house does not get heated as effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will agree with you on this. At least I have shared it. So for those who hear, don't say you are not told, but stop punishing your parents for being good to you.
It becomes hard. And I think we've really moved to more, like you said, materialistic society, that if you're not bringing something, then we are not valuable.
Yes.
And it's such a pity, such a shame. And I've been a victim. Technically, I am, and yeah, maybe need to rethink that a bit in terms of how maybe a little affection.
Oh, I didn't know I touched the road nerve, Paul. See, I can actually
Intellectual humility.
Oh, that's all.
This is intellectual humility.
Yes. I think, yes. It's like you say, it's we have moved into a life that we are not questioning. The ceramic tiles made sense in the Middle East. It gets extremely hot. So you need a cool floor. We are not in the Middle East. We're in the tropics. Our temperatures go nice and low. Yes. So if you have earthen and fired brick, maybe that could be better, because then it maintains certain temperatures. Then you need to remind yourself that in a hut, you had thermal mass in the mud house.
What do you mean by thermal mass?
It can absorb heat.
Okay.
And then at night, it would release the heat gently. Yes. So your stabilized soil block is actually a better solution for your rural home than the quarry stone.
You're saving me cost. I need to go build.
Yes, it's actually cheaper. But our problem is like your problem with electricity, and where we believed that electricity must come from Kindaruma. Any other kind of electricity is inferior. Yes. I'm sure even if we told people we're getting them from geothermal, some might decide to get off the grid. Because it must be hydro.
Yeah, we need to revert to 7 Fox.
7 Fox. Yes, it must come from the 7 Fox. And it comes down to really back to the conversation you didn't want us to have, which is why are we seeing certain reactions to the in the political space, the demonstrations and the rest. It's again the same thing. We are refusing to look at issues at a deeper level. We are becoming totally superficial about issues. And it's now permeating into a national level of people who are pedestrian in thinking. And they believe they can make change at a superficial level. So we need to go back to thinking deeply about every single thing we do. Or my famous one, be intentional. And ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? And part of, like you asked about curiosity and the rest is, like I say, I spent time with my grandfather, his brothers, and they did have levels of, they had knowledge, which even though was not from my time, is still applicable in my time.
Yeah.
And that's part of our problem. With this thing of saying, we need a younger leadership. You can't have younger leadership, sadly. Leadership needs to come with age. If you listened to Ruto in 92, when he was part of YK, he was childish. Today, he's maturing. It takes time. The human starts off as an empty vessel. They acquire over time. And there's no shortcut. You can't pay yourself to maturity. You can't. It happens every single day over a period of time. So let's not deny that fact. And however much I'm having an issue with the Americans and insisting Biden must stand, even though he can't stand, but tells you a lot that society has gotten to the point where any semblance of authority is now being looked for because the rest has fallen apart. And so we said we have the two oldest presidential candidates. Why? And yet we want to go down the same path. We need to start coming down to the rest of us need to keep thinking. We need to start thinking again. We had stopped.
One thing I want to pick from what you've said, I would love for us to expound on it a bit, is you mentioned something to do with maturity comes with time. 100%. We've had stories of big boys where you've grown in age, but your maturity sadly left you behind, or you left it behind, one or the other. Have you had that? Am I looking at this superficially myself?
We keep saying that. And the question becomes is that where are we judging him?
Okay.
Yes. Is he totally mature in all sectors of his life? Or is it that we are picking a specific sector and then wanting to use that to define the entire person? At times just walk out and sit. The watchman where I live right now, the Askari is about, he's about my age. But I can sit down with him and he does give me new knowledge. He does give me new insights. he's not highly educated, but he has experiences. He has brought up a family.
Yes.
He has lost a wife. He has, all that has given him a certain level of maturity, which we cannot take away from him. But if I ask him to sit down and do a spreadsheet for me that does the projection of a cash flow for the next 10 years, then I use that to say, oh, he's a grown man, but he can't do a spreadsheet. Then that is being pedestrian. There are areas where he still has knowledge that he can share.
I really love how, being able to differentiate and look at the nuances that most of us look at those gray areas, because I think we forget them.
We do, because we use one template. Yes. And we assume that template, everyone should fall into that template. It's a big mistake.
How can we become holistic as human beings? I think we try to strive for that.
Part of it comes with, again, age. when there are certain realizations that must come to you, that you define where you're going. Others should not define where you're going. You should be able to justify, you should be able to articulate why you're doing what you're doing. And that should help you to become more holistic. But if you can't explain why you're doing what you're doing, then how will you become holistic? And that to me would be where I would start from. And I think we've had this conversation once when I told you about how the UK tried to improve the intelligence of its masses. Those are conversations we need to start having. It's not about how many people we take to school. It's how many people can reason on an issue. And can we have that reasoning move up to higher and higher levels of articulation? There's a lot of noise that's made about Brexit and the rest. But I'll tell you, I listened to cleaners in the UK talking about Brexit, and they were articulating it better than a lot of people on this side of the continent who are trying to explain to us the impacts of Brexit. If you watch, like I say, you watch BBC, and BBC has no stupid channels. Anything that is on BBC is structured to improve your intellectual capacity. Here we have my famous issue, pattern issue. So when you have a senior manager driving to work and listening to the conversation about how a house girl has disagreed with the askari, then I don't expect him to get to the office and have a high level of reasoning. He has set the base. Media is powerful. It can either improve society or kill society. And ours is killing society.
Thanks, Coach. It's been lovely.
You're welcome.